Now that the college basketball season is 100% complete, you're going to be seeing a lot more NBA draft content from me on all platforms, including this series where I go through the best team fits for prospective first-round selections in the NBA draft. I'm going to go team by team looking at where teams will most likely be drafting based on how they finish in the standings, and at those draft selections, what guys I think they should and will be looking at, starting with my Atlanta Hawks. We are preparing ourselves to head into the play-in tournament with the Nets, Cavs, and Hornets, so we are most likely going to be drafting in that 14 to 16 range, a little ahead of where we were last year. Over the last couple of seasons, consistent defense has definitely been the biggest issue for the Atlanta Hawks. They have a couple of good pieces. I think DeAndre Hunter is one of the better and more versatile defenders in the entire NBA, but no matter who they go after, what type of guy on offense, instant impact defender on day one when they step onto an NBA court, for me is the biggest priority in this draft for the Hawks. I mentioned DeAndre Hunter, who's probably the best defender on the team. He plays a lot of the 3 and 4, but look at the rest of the depth chart, especially in the front court. John Collins is an athletic defender, not necessarily a good defender. I think there's a very big difference. Clint Capella is a decent defensive anchor. I think Onyeka Okongwu is the better defensive center, but past that, you look at Danilo Gallinari, Jalen Johnson, who barely gets time, and there is definitely a role for someone to step in on day one and have a defensive impact. There's 2 guys that come to mind right away that should be in the range for the Hawks on draft night, and they're Tari Eason and Jeremy Sohan out of LSU and Baylor. I think defensively, both of them are 100% NBA ready. On night one, they could probably both play 20-plus minutes a game and help a team like the Hawks contend for a 5 or 6 seed in the East like they wanted to this season. Both of them have a pretty good offensive game, but most importantly, like I mentioned in the priorities, are insanely versatile defenders. Jeremy Sohan is my number 1 on the Hawks big board. I think he has that very Draymond, Scotty Barnes-esque type role where he'll do everything and anything to win, and we saw that in many games throughout the year, especially high-pressure games like in the North Carolina game. In his college games, physically, he's been able to guard anybody on the floor. He's comfortable stepping out on the arc to guard a guard on switches if he has to, which is massive with how often the pick and roll is used in the NBA. And he's also fine staying in the paint against a 4 or even a bigger 5 like he did against Armando Bacot. Offensively, he's comfortable stepping out on the arc, holding the ball. Baylor have run full possessions through him during the season, which I think shows how underrated of a playmaker and passer he is. That's why I draw so many comparisons to Scotty Barnes and Draymond. I think his lateral quickness is pretty underrated. He has really good agility, and I think he'd be great in the pick and roll and especially a pick and pop game. He didn't shoot the 3 very, very well this year. He shot it in the low 30 percentile, but he shot a decent volume, and he's very, very comfortable taking those outside shots. His form is really strong, so I think that's going to go up in the league. Offensively, I think Tari's game is a lot more limited. Defensively, on the other hand, he does remind me a lot of DeAndre Hunter. So if you want to have 2 of those guys that could be elite defenders, that's great, but they're also very similar, so maybe you want to balance it out. But Tari's offensive game definitely needs more work, especially on the outside and as a ball handler. Is he going to need to be a ball handler on a team that has Trae Young that's trying to contend in the playoffs? No, but it's about having the offensive upside to be worthy of a top 15, maybe 20 pick. He's definitely worth it because of the athleticism and how elite of a defender he is. And he's not a terrible offensive player by any means, but I rank Sohan ahead of him for sure. The Hawks also rely a lot on wing play. We see Kevin Huerter, Bogdanovic step up in big moments throughout the season and especially last year's playoffs run. So adding to that wing group, which they didn't do in last year's draft when they took Sharif Cooper and Jalen Johnson, is something that they could definitely address in this year's draft. The way the Atlanta offense is set up with Trae Young surrounded by shooters and is still needed for defense, I don't think a defensive athletic wing like Kendall Brown is going to be the pick here, but I think someone like Ochai Agbaji, the recent national champion and NCAA tournament's most outstanding player who has a really good offensive game like Kevin Huerter, could be a really, really good complement to Trae. We've seen Ochai Agbaji absolutely light up throughout the season, especially from 3 like we did in the tournament. What I love most is he doesn't command a big role offensively because he thrives playing off the ball and creating space in open spaces to get off-ball shots. And we know he's smooth on offense, but defensively he's athletic and he has a great motor, so I think he'd really help diversify the Atlanta wing room a ton. I draw a lot of similarities to Chris Duarte, him being older and a late rise to the lottery range, but I think he could be a great addition in Atlanta. I mentioned Kendall Brown before out of Baylor, and I don't hate the option. I just don't think he's my first choice. He has freakish athleticism, which is awesome. I just don't think his lack of outside game is going to be a good fit for how the Hawks run with their wing play. A wing that I do like a little more than Kendall Brown is MarJon Beauchamp out of the G League Ignite. He has similar upside to Kendall Brown. He's able to play above the rim. He's just not as freakish of an athlete, but he has much more potential offensively with his outside shooting, and you see how good his form is, so I think that's going to develop a lot easier than Kendall Brown's. The last player I want to mention that could be available depending on how the pre-draft process goes is Jaden Hardy. Atlanta could try to pair the G League Ignite lead guard with Trey to have a future scoring stardom duo. He has the chance to slip a little because of some questionable early season shooting splits, but he's a natural scorer and could be a very, very good addition to the backcourt and a long-term partner for Trae Young. So that leaves me with Jeremy Sohan at 1, Ochai Agbaji at 2, Tari Eason, Jaden Hardy at 3 and 4, and then Marjon Beauchamp and Kendall Brown at 5 and 6. And I do think there are other guys like Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, EJ Liddell that will be heavily considered and are still good options, but these are definitely my top 5 or 6 guys. And if somehow the Hawks are in the lottery and Benedict Mathurin slips to 12, 13, 14, whatever it is, he won't. But if he does, I guarantee you he will not go past the Hawks. He would be perfect for this team, but he's not going to make it past the top 10. Appreciate y'all for watching. This is only the first of hopefully every team in the NBA draft and what we're going to do. So make sure to comment what teams you guys want to see next. And also make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the series and any of the NBA draft content coming up. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good week. Peace.